Nothing out there could ever stop me from chasing after the way you love me, keeping me up 2 cups of coffee. Baby, you make me feel so lovely. I keep on running, no, I should've wanted I keep on falling right into your thought. I can't get you off my mind. So sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy, sweet. Yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Oh, what a rush each time you catch me chasing after the way you love me. Color my life up like confetti. Baby, you make me feel so lovely. I keep on running, no, I should've wanted I keep on falling right into your thought. I can't get you off my mind. So sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy, sweet. Yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy, sweet. Yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy, sweet. Yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy. Nothing out there could ever stop me from chasing after the way you love me, keeping me up 2 cups of coffee. Baby, you make me feel so lovely. So sweet, yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy, sweet. Yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy, sweet. Yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy, sweet. Yeah, I need it from you. Got my hands all on you, sweet. Everything I wanted, sugar like yes, please. Love is like candy.
Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Ken McElroy Show. We are having a little camera issues, so we are now using the computer camera for this episode. Every week it's kind of
Yep,
something,
that's all
right?
That's all right.
So
Glad to be live with you guys.
yeah, it's our last full Monday in Idaho. So next Monday we're going to be on the road, headed down to California.
Yep, going to Washington on Sunday.
Yep.
And then Oregon, and then California.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. So, and today we're going to be talking about why you shouldn't be saving money right now. And so why don't you comment if you are saving money, if you're not saving money, if you have money and you don't know what to do with it. All that would be good. Hey, John. John's here from West Florida. Looks like Random is here from Austin, Texas. He said he can't believe he made it on in time, but we were running late, so I don't know. Yeah, and then Jesse, yeah, we're not in Arizona. We're definitely in Idaho. It's like, what, like 80 degrees or something, 85 degrees?
Yeah, it's nice. We were out on the boat last night, and we didn't get home till 9:15, 9:30. It gets late, light here all night. So it's also light in the morning, but I like it. So we're quite a bit up north.
Yep, definitely really nice. So anyway, so about saving money, to start, everybody should be hitting the like button because we're putting on a live show and we need those likes. So go ahead and hit the like button. And make sure you subscribe and put the notification bell on so you always know when we're going live. And then secondly is we have a great handout on today's show at kenmcroy.com/inflation. Definitely want to grab that for a rundown of how everything is going to work. Okay, so now we can start
Yeah,
talking.
well, I think it's important to talk about what's happened over the last few months. If you go back to some of the videos that we've done, we talked about how inflation is going to be high and how it's going to erode savings accounts. And so that's kind of the purpose of the show here, is
Yeah.
to maybe give you guys some ideas and some things that you can do. Obviously, everyone has to have some money in savings. But the banks, they don't want you to save money. And I think probably the biggest, if you really take a look at, the bigger picture, what tax breaks do you get for saving money? I mean,
Right.
it's an interesting question, because there's a lot of tax breaks and tax incentives for things. And certainly you get tax breaks for buying a house. You get tax breaks for the capital work, that you do on certain things, or, in the house. But really, you get taxed on any money that you make on your savings. So, there's no real tax incentives, number one.
Right. So there's no incentives on tax for saving money, but right now banks have a big surplus of savings. So that's why they're not paying you any interest on it. I mean, the savings rate right now is 0.01%.
Yeah, well, right. That's that interest rate. But if you go back and look, Americans have historically been horrible at saving. We've never actually been double digit. If you go back and look at the Fed, St. Louis Fed, or there's a bunch of websites on this, you're going to see that it's been 4, 5, 6, 7%. It was trending up pre-pandemic.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, well, I say trending up. It went from like 6 to 7. But then, it jumped into 14% and even into the 20s.
Well, I heard it's 33% right now. That's what I was reading.
Yeah. So if you take a look at the website, it actually says it went back down to 12 or 14. But that's measured monthly. And I think that the point is it's more than double. And so why do people save more money right now? I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, the pandemic, people didn't know what to do. The government's giving out all this money and some people don't actually need it, so they're just saving it.
Well, that's one reason. But also, typically, if you look at when savings is high, it's when there's uncertainty.
Okay.
And, it's just like anything else. Like if you lose your job, or you're about ready to lose your job, or you think you're going to lose your job, or, you're kind of hunkering down a little bit, to weather that. So traditionally, savings rates have gone up when there's been some level of uncertainty.
Right. Correct. And then, if you guys comment and let us know, like, are you saving money? Do you have money that you don't know what to do with? Like, we're really curious as to what you guys and girls are dealing with. So, and then, back 10 years ago with savings, you could get a CD. Do you remember those CDs?
Yeah. Certificates of deposit, by the way.
Yeah. And you could get, 10, 12% on a CD through the bank, which then you were actually making money on your money to some degree. Now at the 0.01%, and I looked at the CDs too. The CDs are also 0.01%, like down the board. You're not even keeping up with inflation. So what that means is if you have $1,000 in savings, and then month after month, that $1,000 has less purchasing power than the month before. So you're actually losing money.
Yeah. So we keep harping on this, and I hope you guys understand. I understand, the comfort that you get when you save money, right? That you want to have some savings. I was with my 20-year-old son this last week, and he was bragging about how much money he had saved because he had been working, and he was proud of that, and it gives him a little bit of comfort. I completely get that. He hasn't had a savings account that big ever. What he doesn't realize is, but he did ask me about investing. So what he doesn't realize is that if inflation is higher than your interest rate, which right now, we know that the savings rate is about 1%. And we also know that inflation's been 3, 4, and 5% as reported. Some people think it's a lot higher. Then you are going backwards negatively. It's just a fact. You're going to be able to buy less with that same amount of money that you saved.
And Nolan has an interesting comment. I'm going to get to you in a second, Nolan. Let me just go over a couple things first. One, we believe in saving for an emergency fund. You want to have 3 months worth of
you got to have
savings?
whatever you're comfortable with. Of 3 months is a minimum. So let's say your burn rate is $2 or $3 grand a month. You should have that. I know pre-pandemic, like 4 out of 10 Americans didn't even have $400 for emergencies.
Yeah.
So it has not been good in the past. So it's good that these savings rates are up. And I think there's a bit of uncertainty obviously ahead of us.
Yeah, so you definitely want to save for emergencies. And also, you can save for a purchase, right? If you're saving to buy a car, you're saving to put a down payment on a house, those things are okay too. But they also have to make sense. I mean, if you're saving 10 grand a year on a house right now and the house prices keep going up, 20% or whatever, then that might not make sense. But if you're, saving for something that is in your, you're going to be eventually be able to save to, not counting inflation. So
yeah, I'm always monitoring how much cash I have, and you should be too. So as an example, people's savings and cash go up and they go down based on fun and based on emergency funds and based on things that they want or vacations or whatever. That's pretty common. We're not saying to eliminate that, but you got to always take a look at what's happening to the money. That's the most important thing. So I had a bunch of cash, and so I ended up buying a $500,000 house in Scottsdale, and for a rental, because I wanted to move my cash into a hard asset. Mm-hmm. And that's all. And I didn't put debt on it. I just used the cash to buy the hard asset. And yes, I could put debt on it, and maybe I will at some point. But what I was really trying to do was move out of cash.
Right.
I think that's the most important thing. Is it possible that the price of that house goes down? Absolutely. Is it possible that it goes up? Yes. But regardless of that, I'm going to have a renter in there paying me on that money. So I'm going to get a better return on that $500,000 house than I am sitting in the bank in cash. And that is actually the point. It doesn't have to, it could be 5,000, it could be 50,000. It doesn't really matter, but that's the way you guys need to be thinking. How can you make money on your money and still kind of keep it liquid?
Right. And then that's what I did too. I had 100 and some thousand saved, and I put it towards a condo and then took out a small loan on the condo, but it cash flows. So now I'm making money on my money. Yeah. So I'm not really worried about where the market's at. I just know I'm now making money on my money versus it depreciating. And back to Nolan's question, because I think it's a good question. It said, if we shouldn't be saving, does that mean you don't see a correction or crash coming?
So I actually do see a crash coming. I've talked about this, and there's obviously we're going to start to see this forbearance end. We're going to start this eviction moratorium, and house prices are not sustainable, guys. And in fact, I don't know if you guys have already looked today. If you take a look at this article here today in CNBC. Now, not that you should only look at this, but this is the housing boom is over, the pre-pandemic. Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but things are definitely softening. And so, yes, but I think we need that. Things cannot always go up. And so for that, you obviously need cash, but it doesn't have to be in savings. That's kind of the point. So, you need things that you can get liquid on, and there's lots of different options for that.
And remember, guys, it's not about timing the market. It's about cash flow. So if you find a deal that cash flows, it doesn't matter where in the cycle you're at. You just need to make sure that it cash flows. And Matt had said that crashes seem very localized. And we do agree with that. We think certain areas of the country and certain parts of different states are going to crash harder than other parts of other states.
Yeah, you guys, as you guys know, on anything, there's bubbles and there's depressions in all kinds of markets all over the United States. And some are on fire, some are not on fire. There's always cities that are ranked at the top, like Austin and Boise, as an example. And there's going to be cities that are ranked at the bottom. And each one of those are going to have different forbearance issues. Each one of those are going to have different employment issues. And so, you can't just paint a broad brush and say the U.S. is going into a real estate crash. However, one thing is for sure, things just don't seem to be adding up. You've got over 9 million people unemployed. You have a lot of people that are choosing not to go back to work and don't want to go back to work, right? So that is going to be some disruption. And then you have the forbearance ending, you have the evictions ending, and you have prices at an all-time high.
Yeah.
So all of those things are a recipe for affordability issues. And once this government assistance kind of dries up, then I think you guys are going to start to see a very different remaining 2021 through this year. What do you think?
No, I agree. Yeah, you're already starting to see it in the articles. I mean, home sales are down. We have some big time realtor friends we've talked to. Their sales were down and their showings are down. So you're starting to see a slowdown in the markets. But remember, you guys, you're not trying to wait for the market to bottom out because you'll never know when that is. You just have to make sure that you're making money on your money, meaning that the property is cash flowing.
So, yeah, but for purposes of today, we're not really trying to predict the real estate market and all that kind of stuff. What I'm trying to say to you is make sure that if you guys are heavy in savings while we're heading into this pretty high inflation, the worst thing, if you've saved 50 grand, let's say, and it could very easily be worth a lot less in 1 year. It will buy you a lot less. And so you could take that and move it to something that is more asset or protected with an asset or inflation adjusted.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what we're trying to say here.
Yeah. And so, okay, so you have some cash. So here's some options that you can do with it that kind of are good in times of inflation, or typically good. One, cash flowing real estate. That's what a lot of you do. That's what a lot of you are interested in. That's why you're here. But what if you only have a few $1,000s and you don't have enough to actually buy a property, or you can't find a property that cash flows? What else can you do with it? And one of the things that we really like is gold and silver.
Yeah, and physical, stuff that you can actually hold.
Yeah.
That's the key is actually having gold and silver that you can actually hold. And I think, I've been doing saving gold and silver for years and years and years and years. I've bought it at all kinds of different prices. But one thing is for sure, you can buy silver relatively inexpensively as an example, and you can always trade it for cash. There's plenty of places that will do that. And I wouldn't consider it an investment. I would consider it a hedge against the dollar.
A hedge against inflation.
Yeah, potentially. It depends if it goes up.
Yeah.
You could buy silver is, goes up and down, and gold goes up and down, and there's lots of things. And I'm not advocating that you go out and buy a bunch of gold and silver. I am telling you that I have a bunch as a hedge against the dollar. I call it in my insurance policy. I don't necessarily consider it an investment. I consider it an alternative to the US dollar.
Right. It's something, because typically when the dollar goes down in value, silver and gold go up in value, typically.
Typically, they do go the opposite directions, but there's all these nuances, right? So depending on when you need cash.
And Miles had an interesting comment. He said in San Francisco, they have an app where they can purchase physical gold. The app will hold it in storage, and they can use a credit card linked to the gold. So we don't really love anything where you don't physically have the gold with you, because a few reasons. There's a lot of things where even in your ETFs or whatever, where they sell more than they actually own. So if you ever really needed it, or there was a big correction, or everyone was trying to get everything out at once, it's a little bit Ponzi-ish.
It is an interesting concept, though, because think of this. What he's done is he's taken cash, moved it to physical gold. Hopefully it does exist. And And then the depending on what happens to the gold, hopefully you get that appreciation from that. But what they're doing is they're actually taking your cash, putting it in the gold, then linking a credit card to it, which may or may not be a good idea either, depending on what they're charging on the credit card fees, as an example, if they even are. But it is actually a little bit better than sitting heavy in cash if the gold exists.
Fuji-san has an interesting comment. He says he believes cash is king when markets drop. With stocks, bonds, real estate prices at high levels, cash earns. If you already own property, cash can be a hedge against market correction. So he's saying that he wants to have cash when the markets drop. But the question is we don't know when the markets are going to drop versus when the inflation is going to rise.
Right. So obviously you need cash to buy real estate. The one thing that I want to caution you all is the real estate crashes, if you look at, they can take a while. So, when things start to cool off, it looks to be like they are. It could take a year, 2 years, for certain markets to, and we haven't even seen the forbearance numbers. So not every market is considered equal, of course, but also it takes a while. What throws real estate off is lack of demand or oversupply. Those are two things. So lack of demand might be unemployment issues. Lack of demand might be affordability issues. Lack of demand might be from interest rates that have hiked up and made it less affordable. Or oversupply could be obviously a lot of building in an area, or perhaps maybe a bunch of defaults in an area. All that stuff takes time. And so real estate moves pretty slow, just like it did to where we are now. The air in the balloon also goes out very, very, very slow. So it's not something that you need immediately. You don't need cash immediately. The last thing you're going to want to do is buy immediately if we're on our way to a crash. You don't want to, as I like to say, you don't want to catch a falling knife. You want the real estate to crash. Even back in 2007, 2008, during the last crash, we really started ramping up our purchases around 2010, 2011, and 2012. And, everything was very disruptive at that time, and banks had owned a lot of real estate. And that's kind of what happens in a crash. It takes a while for that to make its way back to whoever holds that real estate. And back then, it was primarily the banks.
And it's a long process. And remember, right now, we're super behind on building because we have an issue with prices being so high, lack of workers, all that. So we're trailing on the supply, creating more supply. So that is going to affect things too and could slow things down a bit.
Construction costs and construction labor, or labor in general, as you guys know, labor is a problem right now. I mean, restaurants are closing 1, 2, 3 days a week to make ends meet. And labor costs are going up. So one, people aren't working, but two, the costs are going up. So people are having to pay more for, and so therefore the cost of those services or whatever they provide is going to have to go up to cover the payroll costs.
Exactly. And Christina said she doesn't see the markets going down anywhere in the U.S. And she kind of asked where we're seeing that, and we're just hearing it from our connections and our realtor friends that showings have slowed down, purchases have slowed down, houses are staying on the market longer, and that's all part of the beginning of a slowdown cycle.
But it might be temporary too.
Yep.
But we've been up here for almost 4 weeks, and I've been meeting with obviously a ton of real estate people that own realty companies. One of my friends did 120 million last year himself, and he did 70 already this year. And he said, as just one example, that listings that he would put out hardly have any showings at the moment. And that could be an affordability issue. It could be, a timing issue. But here in the summer in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, July and August are the prime months. And so to have a slowdown here in the summer is a bit concerning, as told by people that are actually doing deals here locally. And that's just here. That's not Phoenix. That's not Seattle. That's, very, very different there.
Yep. And then another way to hedge against inflation is through the commodities market, which that's like your grain, electricity, oil, beef, natural gas, those kind of things. You can invest in that through the stock market or through direct.
Think of this, guys. Like, what are people going to need and want, in this next cycle? That's what you want to try to put your money into, right? Like, those are things that are going to do very, very, very well.
Exactly.
Let's talk about some things that are probably not a good idea.
No matter what the salespeople tell you.
Yeah. So so if you are in any of these, you might want to take a look at one of my biggest concerns that I have around inflation, and I mentioned this before, is somebody like my mom. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to see my mom on Sunday. And she's on a fixed income. When my dad passed away, he had a fixed income from a pension. He was a union worker. Fixed, anything that's fixed, any fixed income from a pension, from a retirement account, or anything like that is actually going to be in trouble, because if it's not indexed for inflation, you could potentially be in trouble, because the amount of money that you continually get is going to stay the same, but you're going to be able to buy less with it.
Exactly. Yep. And they're on a fixed income. But even those of you that have a job, you might have to get a new job in order to make more money to catch up with inflation. That's higher, paying more.
Yeah, that's why we've done some videos on side hustles, and I think that's something that, and people are doing that. I mean, people are jumping into the Airbnb market. People are jumping into rental markets. One of the reasons the rental market and the real estate market is so hot is because people are actually afraid of how the Fed's been pumping up the stock market, right? So they've been, not to say that they're jumping in one or the other. There's nothing wrong with being diverse, but people are actually taking a look, and they're investing as well.
So Shelving on YouTube is letting you know that your mom should never have to worry about money. And she doesn't. You were just using her as an example.
I know. I take care of my mom. It's my mom.
Fuji-san, I want to clear this up. He said, physical gold and silver do not cash flow. You make your money when you sell, which is 100% true, but it does protect you against inflation, usually, because it will, when inflation goes up and the dollar's worth less, those things typically are worth more.
Typically. Yeah. Not always, but it's a very good point. Again, it's an insurance policy. I don't consider it an investment. It does not cash flow. There's a couple things that you got to be careful of. One is a whole life insurance policy. Right?
Yeah. So these are the things that really don't hedge against inflation, even if people tell you that they do. So the whole life insurance policy.
Yeah. Just if you guys are in one of those, just take a look at the terms in it. I'll give you a great example. Again, going back to my parents, when my dad passed away, he would always talk about this insurance policy. Your mom is taken care of, she's, I got this insurance policy. When he did, he had bought an insurance policy for her, and it was 10 grand. And the insurance policy was 10 grand.
It didn't move with inflation.
No. And
so he probably bought that like 70 years ago.
It was a long time ago. I can't even remember the time frame, but the point is, he bought a $10,000 insurance policy, which was a lot back then, and it was 10 grand. I mean, it barely paid for the funeral. And so that's my point. You just got to be really careful around that.
Definitely. Another thing is bank CDs, as we've already kind of touched on.
Fixed, if they're fixed certificates of deposit.
Yeah, right now they're like 0.01%, and they don't really work with you with the inflation. You know what I mean? It's not going to help you out.
Right. This is a time, guys, where you should be looking at all the things if that you have. Money doesn't care. Doesn't care if it's in savings. It doesn't care if it's in a CD. It doesn't care if it's an insurance policy. It doesn't care if it's in real estate. They all have different returns. It doesn't care if it's in oil and gas. It doesn't care if it's in silver or gold. It does what it does based on the investment. And so your job is to make sure that if we're going into a high inflation economy, that your money is being protected because of that. That's all we want to try to communicate to you here on this particular
Yes, you
live.
do not want to be saving money. That's
Right.
just keep that in mind through this whole thing.
But you do need savings.
But you need savings
Yeah.
for your emergency fund and
Yep.
things like that.
Yes.
And a lot of people are asking about crypto, so let's just touch on that really quickly. It really remains to be seen, in my opinion, if it hedges inflation. We haven't went through a high inflation period with crypto. It's been kind of up and down and up and down. It just went up again the last day or two. But I'm not seeing a trend with inflation, but it's too early to tell, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, let's look at why crypto, well, one of the reasons is so popular. One is it's easy, right? And you can pay somebody anywhere in Africa and not have to get banks and everybody else involved. That is why it's so popular. And so what people are concerned about, again, is what's happening with the dollar, what's happening with inflation. I think so. As long as they're concerned around those kinds of things, I think an alternative is always going to be a good thing. Now, for me, as we've had George Gammon on the show and we've talked to Mark Moss and we've talked to a bunch of people, we have friends that are all in crypto. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think being all in on real estate is a good idea. I think that you just need to have allocations. I have an allocation for gold and silver. I have an allocation for crypto. I have an allocation for real estate, obviously, because I'm heavy in real estate. But I have allocations for all kinds of things. I even have stocks. And so, I'm in different things. And I think that's the most important thing.
Agreed. Yeah, we definitely agree on that. So at the end of the day, basically what we're saying is your savings account is not going to make you wealthy. And you could be sorely disappointed in the loss of buying power that you have if you sit on a lot of money in your savings account.
Yeah. Just again, guys, just take a look at the facts. I know the Fed is trying to figure out how to curb inflation. What they're also afraid of is deflation. So, deflation is obviously when something goes down. Inflation is something when something goes up. So they have this balancing act. And one of the things that they've used over the years are interest rates. So if you rise interest rates or they slowly tick up, then consumer spending goes down. People buy less TVs, they buy less cars, they buy less houses. And so all of that stuff is something that's used to kind of curb inflation. And if that happens, it's going to push affordability even worse.
Yep. And we had a good question. I'm sorry, I don't remember who asked it, but they had asked about pre-foreclosures. Do you think it's good to buy pre-foreclosures? But I don't think we're there in the market cycle yet.
Well, they do exist, but the markets, to one person's point, in a lot of areas, they're not seeing, any slowdown. So I'm sure the woman who mentioned that is obviously 100% correct. But we are also seeing areas that are. And so the point is the pre-foreclosure, if there's a number of buyers, then and it still cash flows, then it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
But if there's no buyers and there's a lot of pre-foreclosures and a lot of forbearance also coming into the market, you're probably better off to wait, because obviously it's a supply. If there's a lot of supply hitting a market, let's say, then it will spin that market a little bit more off balance and prices will come down.
Yeah. And make sure you guys, we have a whole handout on this. It's very informative. KenMcElroy.com/inflation. we took a lot of time putting that together. So I think it'll be really helpful for you if you go ahead and download that.
Yeah, and there's one question I want to answer from Carlos Hernandez here.
So he's a premium member of ours.
Yeah, and he said, if banks offer a 40-year mortgage, should I take it? I say 100% if it's fixed. So we are actually do 40-year mortgages through our HUD program. It's called the 221D4 program on some of our apartment buildings. And all that does is it lowers your payment and pushes it out another 10 years. If you can hedge inflation with 40-year mortgages fixed, I highly recommend it. It's a great question, Carlos.
Yeah, and we have another premium question here from Jennifer. She said she's a house flipper looking for advice on what she should do before purchasing her first multifamily unit. She's considering house hacking.
So obviously, I'm a massive fan of house hacking. If you can, for those of you who might not know, house hacking is essentially buying something and renting the rest to pay for your mortgage, and you basically living somewhere for free. I'm a massive fan of that because you get the tax benefits, you get the income, and you get somebody else to kind of pay for your place. We were just meeting with a young man last week that I have been kind of mentoring, and he just did that 2 years ago, and then just he refinanced and pulled $138,000 out of cash, tax free through a cash out refinance, and he's looking to do it again. So it's a great way to get your rent paid for. Obviously, you got to come up with the down payment somehow. And certainly there's enough money floating around in the economy. You should be able to, if you find a deal like that, you're going to be able to find an investor.
Yeah. And then our last question on premium is from Missy, and she wanted to know what the motivation would be to invest outside the U.S. Would it be to hedge against the U.S. housing downturns?
Well, there's a couple things to consider here. First of all, I don't have a tremendous amount of experience about other countries, but you have to look at the political environment, the tax benefits, all of those kinds of things. The U.S. is taxed on its worldwide income. So if you're investing in Mexico, let's say, or Canada, or Australia, or Europe, or whatever, and you profit there, it's my understanding that you have to pay tax there, and then you also have to pay tax on your worldwide income. So you really need to take a look at your tax. However, one thing, a lot of people are investing in other countries to get additional passports and also to get residency somewhere else. So these are more I would call them maybe conspiracy theory or backup plan or whatever. And there's a bunch of people out there, really, really smart people that are doing this. So there are ways to invest in other countries and then get an additional passport if that can, and then you can invest in another country. You get the cash flow from obviously that investment if you buy it correctly, and you could potentially get another passport, which allows you access to other countries. So almost like a dual citizenship, which a lot of people are doing right now. And that's something that you might want to take a look at. But the one thing that you always want to make sure of are the tax consequences, because when you bring that money back into the United States, it's my belief that it's taxed. So it doesn't really matter where you invest.
And also you have to be careful investing overseas because the laws and the rights of ownership are not.
Yeah, you can. I've had friends that have had issues in Mexico and other areas, so again, back to the political environment. But I'm not the expert on that. There's a tremendous amount of information out there and some really, really smart people out investing outside. I know George Gammon, as an example, has done a lot in Colombia, and he's been very, very happy there. I know Robert and Kim Kiyosaki have invested outside of the country. The
real estate guys.
Yeah, the real estate guys have done pretty well in multiple countries. We've done a lot of cross-border stuff with Canada, and Mexico because of the proximity to the United States. And we've had no issues generally.
And I want to give a shout out to Zach on our YouTube. He said he's 26 and he house hacked his way to over 700,000 in cash flowing real estate with only 35,000 down on the deal.
Wow.
So he said it can be done.
Yes, yeah, it's true, Zach. Guys, I'm telling you, pay attention to that young man. He's probably going to do very well.
Yeah, and Zach, reach out because we'd love to have you on the show.
Yeah, we'd love to. Yeah, because your story, as an example, a lot of people they just don't think that it can work. And, and that's kind of the thing that we hear mostly is, I can't believe how it worked. And it won't always work if you're not doing the right things. So you do have to have some education around it. You shouldn't just go out and buy and try it without a tremendous amount of research.
Exactly. So anyways, I think that's our show for today. It's been awesome to see you guys, and we'll see you again next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys. We'll talk to you soon.